The Zarkel emperor liked to begin his mornings by declaring war on something. Sometimes it was a planet, sometimes a concept. One Tuesday, it was gravity. His advisors spent the afternoon explaining that the universe would collapse without it, so he compromised by banning heavy moods in court instead. Emperor Vornax IX was a colossus of arrogance wrapped in golden scales, his eyes twin shards of molten pride. He sat upon a throne carved from the bones of conquered worlds, sipping luminescent nectar and pretending to listen while his council presented the latest intelligence from the outer sectors. One trembling minister projected a blue hologram of a small blue planet. Designation: Earth, the minister stammered. Primitive species. Self-destructive, territorial, and oddly creative. The emperor leaned forward. How creative? They have devices called televisions, my liege. They transmit visions of their greatest warriors. One named Rambo, another Terminator. Both single combatants who annihilate entire armies. The court murmured in awe. Vornax chuckled, a sound like thunder wrapped in silk. So, these humans declare their power through art? Delightful. They worship violence, yet pretend it's entertainment. How charmingly savage. They also have rituals called karaoke and reality television, the minister added. That silenced the room. A nervous cough rippled through the chamber. Vornax rose, his ornate robes catching the glimmer of a dozen suns. It seems these humans consider chaos a pastime. Perhaps they are not as docile as we assumed. Another advisor, old and shriveled as dried leather, dared to speak. Your Majesty, shall we establish contact? The Emperor's smile could have melted asteroids. No, let us first amuse ourselves. A harmless jest to remind the galaxy of our place above the mud. He turned, gaze settling upon the figure standing quietly at the edge of the hall, his daughter, Princess Graunera. She was everything the Zarkel found unbecoming in royalty, broad-shouldered, towering, with the strength of 10 guards and the appetite of 20. Her emerald scales shimmered not with the sleek sharpness of her kin, but with a deep, opalescent warmth, like polished stone. Among her people, she was a walking embarrassment, the obese heir whispered servants, the planet crusher who cracked furniture and morale alike. Vornax's smirk deepened. We shall send an ambassador to these humans, someone who reflects the Empire's generosity. Graunera, my daughter, the honor shall be yours. A hush fell. Graunera's throat tightened, though she bowed with perfect grace. As you command, father. The court erupted in laughter. Someone muttered, at least the humans will surrender quickly before she sits down. Her father's laughter echoed last and longest. That night, Graunera stood before the viewing window of her private chamber, watching the stars crawl like silver veins across the darkness. She tried not to hear their laughter reverberating in her memory. Her claws flexed unconsciously, scraping faint lines into the metal rail. They had always laughed, at her size, at her gentleness, at her wish to study the creatures her empire conquered instead of crushing them. But the laughter never quite pierced her hope. Hope that somewhere among the billions of stars existed a place that would not flinch at her shadow. Perhaps that place was the tiny blue world spinning quietly beyond the edge of known maps. When dawn arrived, she entered her ship without ceremony. No send-off, no farewell. The Imperial engineers whispered bets on whether she'd return at all. The engines ignited, casting violet fire across the marble hangar. Within moments, she vanished into the black, leaving behind only the fading echo of mockery. The voyage through hyperspace stretched like a dream. She passed nebulae that glowed like bruises, the ghostly remains of battles her father had won centuries ago. Alone in the silence, Graunera whispered to herself the words she had never spoken aloud. Let them laugh. I will find something worth not conquering. On Earth, dawn broke over a Nevada junkyard that smelled of oil, dust, and sunburned dreams. Jack Holler lay beneath a rusted pickup truck, one boot poking out, radio blaring old Bon Jovi. He'd been a mechanic long enough to know when an engine was beyond redemption, though he kept fixing them anyway. Machines at least didn't lie or leave. He tightened a bolt, wiped sweat from his temple, and muttered, "There you go, sweetheart. Per for daddy." The truck responded by collapsing one of its springs. "Yeah, I love you too." That was when the sky split open. A streak of violet fire tore across the horizon, soundless at first, then roaring like the world's angriest blender. The air rippled, heat scorching his face. Jack stumbled to his feet as the object crashed a mile away, sending a shockwave that rattled the entire scrapyard. Old hubcaps danced like coins in a storm. He grabbed his wrench, because apparently that was his survival instinct, and ran toward the smoke. When he reached the crater, he stopped dead. The ship was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Sleek yet dented, its hull glowing faintly as if alive. He could see his reflection distorted across its surface, a grease-streaked man with eyes too curious for his own good. A hatch hissed open. Mist spilled out, glowing faintly purple. From within came the heavy, deliberate steps of someone not used to hiding. Then she emerged. Graunera filled the crater with her presence, a being of shimmering emerald scales and powerful grace, her eyes like twin suns caught in shadow. She looked around, disoriented, and when her gaze fell on Jack, the air between them seemed to hum. For a long, silent moment, neither spoke. Then Jack, always first to break reason with humor, said, "You lost, ma'am? 'Cause this ain't exactly the Hilton." Her translator crackled before producing a deep, resonant voice. "This planet is Earth." "Last I checked," he replied, "unless you were aiming for Vegas. You're only about 2 hours off." She blinked, unsure if he was mocking her. Then, unexpectedly, a low laugh rumbled from her chest, the kind that shook dust from the ground. "You speak with strange courage. Lady, I'm talking to a lizard goddess who crash-landed in my junkyard. Courage is kind of mandatory right now." She tilted her head. "You would call me goddess?" "Well, I'd call you whatever gets me not vaporized." A smile, hesitant, almost shy, curved across her scaled lips. For the first time in her life, no one flinched, no one whispered. He looked at her not with fear, but curiosity. "My ship is damaged," she said finally. "I require assistance." Jack rubbed his chin, glancing over the alien wreckage. "Yeah, well, I fix Fords mostly, but sure, let's pop the hood." She watched as he climbed onto the hull, tools jangling from his belt, humming the Ghostbusters theme under his breath. The absurdity of it, this tiny human clambering over a Royal Star Cruiser, was so profound that Graunera almost forgot the purpose of her mission. Her father had sent her here to humiliate herself before a primitive race. Instead, she found herself fascinated by their simplicity, their lack of hierarchy, their careless humor, their warmth. When night fell, the two of them sat by a campfire beside the smoking ship. Jack handed her a mug of coffee. She sniffed it suspiciously before taking a sip. Her eyes widened. "This is extraordinary." "Welcome to Earth's finest addiction," he said. Graunera stared into the flames, the light dancing across her scales. "Your people are unlike any I have studied. You do not fear me." Jack shrugged. "Lady, I grew up with 3 sisters. Fear's relative." For the first time, she smiled without hesitation. Above them, the stars burned cold and distant, and somewhere in that sea of light, an emperor waited for news of his little joke. When he received the first image from his spies of his obese daughter laughing beside a human mechanic, his golden eyes narrowed. "So," he murmured, "the monkeys laugh with her, not at her." He turned toward his generals. "Prepare the fleet." And far below, in the desert heat, Graunera felt the stars shudder, as if the universe itself had taken a deep, warning breath. Jack discovered that alien engines were a lot like women, complex, unpredictable, and not to be insulted in their presence, especially when the woman in question could bend a truck frame with her bare hands. The wreckage of Graunera's ship had become part of his scrapyard now, a glittering metallic cathedral surrounded by rusted cars and oil drums. Each morning, the sun turned the hull's cracked surface into a field of fractured rainbows. Jack called it the prettiest damn mess I ever saw. Graunera crouched beside him, the ground trembling faintly under her weight as she passed him a plasma spanner. Careful, she warned, her translator humming softly. The containment field is unstable. Lady, everything I own is unstable, Jack said, wiping sweat from his brow. But she'll purr again, don't you worry. He twisted a bolt. A surge of blue light arced up, zapping the air. Groundnera's eyes widened. Jack grinned. That's the sound of progress. She tilted her head. On Zarkel, progress doesn't usually involve combustion. That's because you folks never tried diesel. He said it lightly, but beneath the jokes was a rhythm. Days spent side by side, nights under the hum of alien circuitry, two different worlds working in rough harmony. She would study his movements, fascinated by the patience with which he fixed things no sane engineer would touch. He, in turn, watched how she carried strength like sorrow, grace hidden in the curve of her shoulders, vulnerability in the way she hesitated before speaking her mind. Sometimes she'd ask him questions about Earth. Why humans painted cars red, why they laughed when nervous, why they built houses from wood when metal was stronger. Jack would shrug. We like things that can burn, I guess. Makes life interesting. When he taught her to make coffee, she nearly shorted out the generator trying to roast beans with plasma heat. Her apology came in the form of an earnest bow and 2 mugs of what tasted like scorched motor oil. He drank both anyway. At night, when the desert cooled and the stars came alive, they'd sit by the flickering remains of their fire and talk. She'd tell him about her empire, how the Zarkel built monuments to perfection, how weakness was mocked, how beauty was measured by how little space one occupied. Jack listened, leaning against a tire stack. So, they want everyone looking like spaghetti noodles with scales? In essence, yes. He snorted. Hell, half of Hollywood would fit right in. Her laughter filled the air, deep and thunderous, scattering a nearby flock of birds. He loved that sound, the kind that made the world feel lighter. But as the days passed, something else stirred beneath the humor. Groundnera's hands lingered when she passed him tools. Her gaze softened when he wasn't looking. One evening, while fixing the ship stabilizer, their hands brushed over a glowing panel. The touch sent a quiet tremor through her body, the air between them thickening with a strange electricity. She withdrew first, her voice low. On my world, such contact would be forbidden. Jack leaned back. Well, on mine, it's usually how good things start. Her throat fluttered with a low hum, uncertain whether to laugh or flee. You speak boldly for one so fragile. He smiled, grease-smeared and sincere. I fix engines for a living. Fragile's just another word for fixable. The silence that followed was different, warmer, more dangerous. Meanwhile, the world outside the scrapyard had begun to stir. The crash hadn't gone unnoticed. Military satellites had detected the energy spike. Scientists whispered of first contact. Conspiracy forums lit up like Christmas trees. Jack ignored it all, too focused on the alien woman who'd turned his life into science fiction. Until the morning the sky, filled with shadows. A line of ships streaked across the clouds, dark triangles leaving contrails of silver light. Groundnera froze mid-step, her pupils narrowing to sharp slits. Those are Zarkel scouts. Jack frowned. Friends of yours? Spies, she whispered. My father is watching. He followed her gaze upward. The ships glided silently, menacingly, before vanishing beyond the horizon. The desert went quiet again, but the calm felt false, stretched thin over something waiting to snap. That night, Groundnera sat apart from a fire. Her scales caught the light in dull flashes, her usual composure replaced by a heavy stillness. Jack approached with 2 mugs of instant cocoa. All right, he said gently. Talk to me. My father sent me here as ridicule, she said, to show the galaxy that even his flawed daughter could dominate a lesser species. But instead, her voice wavered. I found you, and now he sees my laughter as treason. Jack sat beside her. That's his problem, not yours. You do not understand. He will not forgive this. The Zarkel do not tolerate shame. They will come, and they will burn this world to erase the joke. Jack stared into the flames, jaw tightening. Then we'll make sure they regret it. She looked at him, truly looked, as if seeing something that defied her understanding. You speak as though you could defy an empire. I've defied my landlord for 6 months straight, he said, dead serious. An empire can get in line. Her laugh came out half-choked, half-tearful. The sound broke something in her. Some last barrier between royal duty and personal desire. She reached out, hesitating only a second before resting her hand over his. The contact was careful, reverent, as though she feared he might shatter. You are impossibly reckless, she said. Occupational hazard. Their eyes met. Between them, the fire crackled, painting their faces in shades of gold and shadow. The air smelled of oil, smoke, and the faint sweetness of scorched cocoa. For a heartbeat, the entire universe shrank to that small circle of warmth. Then the ground trembled. A burst of static erupted from the ship's communication console. Symbols scrolled across the cracked display, red and violent. Groundera leapt up, claws scraping against metal. Jack followed, grabbing a flashlight. What's it say? She stared at the message, eyes wide with disbelief. A broadcast from the Imperial throne. My father declares humanity a potential threat. The fleet is mobilizing. Mobilizing? Preparing for war? Jack's face went pale beneath the grime. You mean your people are about to? Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. They intend to invade. He swore under his breath, running a hand through his hair. Well, damn. Guess we just made first contact the hard way. Groundera turned toward him, desperation flickering in her eyes. You must hide. When they arrive, they will destroy everything in their path. Not gonna happen. You don't understand. No, you don't, he interrupted, stepping closer. Earth's got a long history of underestimating itself. Every time someone says we can't win, we prove them wrong. We've fought worse things than gods, with duct tape and bad coffee. She stared at him in silence, the weight of his words sinking into the quiet hum of the ship. You would fight for me? He hesitated, then smiled faintly. Nah, for us. For a moment, she forgot the fleet, the empire, the shame. She saw only the human standing before her, imperfect, stubborn, and entirely unafraid. Something in her chest ached in a way no battle ever had. She leaned down, her massive frame casting him in shadow. Jack Holler, she said softly, you are either the bravest creature I have ever met or the most foolish. He grinned. Can it be both? The screen behind them flickered again, showing a distant image of hundreds of ships aligning across the void, a wall of light swallowing the stars. Groundera's breath hitched. They're closer than I thought. Jack turned, watching the glow spreading like dawn across the sky. The desert wind carried the scent of ozone and dust. Somewhere a coyote howled. He reached for his wrench, the same one he'd used to fix her ship, the same one that now felt like the last familiar thing in the universe. Well, he said quietly, guess it's time to tune up the planet. Groundera didn't smile this time. She only whispered, and time for me to choose which world I belong to. Above them, the first star vanished behind the silhouette of an approaching armada. The first alien ship pierced Earth's sky at dawn, sleek obsidian and quiet as judgment. It hovered above the clouds with the poise of a predator, its hull reflecting sunrise like liquid armor. A dozen more followed, then hundreds, until the heavens resembled a swarm of silver blades glinting in slow formation. Jack watched from his scrapyard roof, a wrench in one hand, coffee in the other. Well, he muttered, so much for a quiet morning. Groundera stood beside him, her expression unreadable, pupils narrowing to vertical slits as she scanned the sky. That is only the first wave. My father brings the entire armada. Whole family reunion, huh? This is not a jest, she said sharply. Each ship carries enough firepower to vaporize continents. Jack sipped his coffee. Then they're in for surprise. Earth's been trying to vaporize itself for decades. We've had practice. Her jaw clenched, but the faintest ghost of a smile betrayed her tension. Still, he could see fear flicker beneath her composure. Not for herself, never for herself, but for the strange, reckless species that had made her laugh. By noon, every satellite feed, every phone, every TV on Earth was hijacked by a single broadcast, the golden-scaled face of Emperor Vornax 9 filling the screen. His voice boomed through the atmosphere, translated instantly into every human language. "Primitive inhabitants of Earth," he declared, "you harbor my daughter, a fugitive of the Zarkel throne. Surrender her and submit your planet to our rule. Refuse and you will be erased." The world held its breath. In Washington, generals scrambled. In Beijing, diplomats cursed. In Tokyo, someone quietly said again. Then came a reply broadcast from a military base somewhere in Nevada. A woman's voice, firm, measured, and dripping with something the aliens could not yet identify: amusement. "This is General Samantha O'Neill of the United Human Defense Coalition," she said. "Copy that, big guy. You threatened to erase us." She paused. "You must be new here." Laughter rippled across continents. Humanity, united for the first time in centuries, did what it did best when staring down apocalypse. They started making memes. Within minutes, #GoldenLizardDad trended worldwide. Someone remixed his speech into a dubstep track. Vornax's scales flushed from gold to scarlet. "They mock me?" "Yes, sire," his aide whispered. "Relentlessly. Then burn their oceans. Begin the assault." The sky erupted. Beams of plasma fell like divine punishment, carving across the atmosphere. But where they struck, they fizzled harmlessly against invisible fields. Above the Pacific, one of the Armada's dreadnoughts suddenly spun out of control, its targeting system hijacked. On board, alien officers screamed as every console began displaying dancing cartoon cats. "Sir," one panicked officer reported, "their countermeasure is infiltrating our mainframe." "What kind of weapon is this?" The response came in distorted English from the ship speakers. "You've been rickrolled." Across the fleet, chaos bloomed. Human hackers, teenagers, engineers, and meme lords working together through every network had turned the world's Wi-Fi into an arsenal. Screens flooded with pixelated faces, looping songs, and endless pop-ups reading, "You can't stop the human spirit." Graunera's eyes widened as she watched through her ship scanner. "They're fighting with music?" Jack grinned. "We call it psychological warfare. Works better than bullets." On Earth, experimental defense systems kicked to life. The Space Force, long mocked as a joke, revealed itself to be anything but. Hidden orbital cannons rose from the moon's shadow. Drones the size of cities swarmed like metallic bees, guided by AIs named after 1980s action heroes. The first counterattack came not from a government, but from a Kansas farmer who had welded a rocket engine to a grain silo. The makeshift missile soared into the sky, hit an alien scout ship, and detonated with the force of patriotism and fertilizer. The explosion lit up the morning like fireworks on Independence Day. By then, the world was watching in real time. Newscasters shouted over cheers as alien vessels tumbled from orbit. Hashtags evolved into battle cries. #Welcome to Earth and #Hold my beer. In the midst of the chaos, Graunera stood in the cockpit of her repaired ship, half Zarkel design, half American improvisation. Chrome panels met duct tape, and the control interface now played Eye of the Tiger whenever engines engaged. Jack slid into the co-pilot seat, flipping switches like a man who'd watched too many action movies. "You sure this baby's space-worthy?" "By human standards," she said. "That's all I need." The ship roared upward, tearing through the clouds toward the largest of the alien dreadnoughts, Vornax's flagship. Lightning streaked around them as they broke the sound barrier. Graunera's hands moved over the controls with elegant precision, every motion betraying royal training. Jack, meanwhile, adjusted the cup holder he'd installed. "Never thought I'd die fighting space lizards with an alien princess in a Chevy hybrid," he muttered. "You will not die," she said firmly. He glanced at her. "Promise." Her gaze didn't waver. "Promise." They breached the upper atmosphere, Greeted by the sight of 1,000 ships locked in chaos, Zarkel warcraft spiraling under EMP bursts, others colliding after humans hijacked their navigation systems with something called Windows Vista Update exe. They approached the flagship. Vornax's face appeared on their comm screen, eyes blazing. "You dare bring my daughter into battle, human?" Jack smirked. "Hey, she brought me. I'm just a ride." The Emperor's lip curled. "You mock me like the rest of your kind. But mockery will not save you." Graunera leaned forward, voice low and steady. "Father, call off your fleet." "You are no longer my blood," he hissed. "You have chosen weakness. I have chosen freedom." Her tone sharpened, filled with quiet power. "And strength is not cruelty, it is compassion. You've ruled through fear. So long you've forgotten what power truly is." Vornax sneered. "You speak like them." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time you listened." Jack flipped the comm to broadcast. "Hey, Emperor Sunshine, how's about a little Earth hospitality?" The speakers blasted AC/DC's Thunderstruck at maximum volume. The sound wave, amplified through the ship's modified resonance drive, rippled across space. Every Zarkel vessel within range convulsed as frequencies scrambled their targeting systems. The battlefield erupted in dazzling explosions. The war, if it could still be called that, lasted exactly 19 minutes. When the smoke cleared, the once mighty armada drifted like debris over the curve of Earth. Ships powered down, communication silent. Across the galaxy, every species watching the broadcast saw the impossible. The invincible Zarkel Empire brought to its knees by humans wielding music memes and sheer audacity. On the flagship's bridge, Emperor Vornax slumped on his throne, disbelief etched across his regal features. His generals were gone. His fleet was gone. His pride, Ash, Jack, and Graunera docked their ship on the fractured hull. As they entered, the corridors echoed with dying systems and the faint hum of surrender. Vornax looked up as they approached. "My daughter," he rasped. "Do you come to gloat?" Graunera knelt before him, her voice heavy but calm. "No, father. I come to end this." He studied her face, the strength there, the unfamiliar peace. "You love these humans." "I respect them," she said. "They are what we pretend to be, unbreakable." His gaze flicked to Jack, standing behind her with a wrench slung like a weapon. "And you are the one who corrupted her." Jack shook his head. "Nah, she just finally saw the joke for what it was. And you're the punchline." Vornax's hand trembled over the console. For a moment, Jack thought he'd strike, but instead the Emperor sagged. "Perhaps I have ruled too long." Graunera arose, towering, her voice soft. "Then let go." Silence stretched, a long, final breath of empire. Then, with a slow nod, Vornax pressed a command on his wrist console. Across the sky, the remaining ships powered down completely. Jack exhaled. "That's it? That's how wars end in your family." She turned to him, tears glinting beneath her scales. "No, that's how tyranny ends." The Emperor looked once more at Earth, at the world that had undone him. "You have changed her," he whispered, "and perhaps the galaxy." His last order transmitted, a ceasefire beacon rippling outward through the void. Then his throne dimmed, his head bowing in silence. In the stillness that followed, Graunera's voice broke. "He was cruel, but he was still my father." Jack stepped beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "And you just saved both our worlds." Outside the viewport, dawn broke again, light spilling across the wreckage of ships and the curve of a blue planet still spinning stubbornly below. But beyond that light, in the black silence between stars, something stirred. A shadow vast and unseen. A signal, ancient, predatory, responding to the fall of the Zarkel. Jack frowned at the blinking console. Princess, what's that?" Her eyes widened, reflecting distant movement on the scanner. "Not my people," she whispered. "Something worse." The world was still smoldering when peace arrived. Not the peace that came from treaties or signatures, but the kind that followed exhaustion, awe, and disbelief. The sky above Earth was littered with metallic carcasses, the broken bones of a once unstoppable alien fleet, drifting like silver leaves. Every nation had gone quiet, every screen replaying the same image. A blue planet that had faced down an empire and somehow won. Jack stood on the balcony of what had once been his scrapyard office, now converted into the first intergalactic engineering exchange. The sign wasn't official. He'd painted it himself with leftover oil and sarcasm, but it felt right. Growlnera sat on the hood of a rusted truck nearby, legs crossed, eyes distant. She had changed. The proud alien princess, who had once sneered at human grease stains, now wore them like medals. Her armor was gone, replaced by a mechanic's jacket and fingerless gloves. The galaxy's most feared daughter had traded her royal insignia for a wrench. So, Jack broke the silence, setting 2 mugs of coffee beside her. Still planning to overthrow humanity, or are we good now? Her smile was faint but genuine. You humans are impossible to overthrow. You weaponize chaos. Compliment accepted. She looked at the horizon, where sunrise met smoke. The Empire is gone. My people will be looking for someone to blame. The other houses will rise, each claiming they could have done better. There will be war again, just not today. Jack leaned against the truck, watching her profile in the morning light. You don't have to go back. I do, she said quietly. They'll need someone to rebuild what's left. Someone who remembers what mercy looks like. He didn't reply. There was too much truth in her tone, too much finality. Instead, he took a sip of his coffee and grimaced. Still can't believe aliens don't drink this stuff. It tastes like burnt soil, she said deadpan. Exactly. That's the point. For a moment, the only sound was the wind pushing through the skeletons of broken ships. Children played nearby, throwing stones at alien debris, laughing like nothing monumental had happened. Humanity had already begun moving on. That was its greatest strength and its greatest insanity. General O'Neill arrived in a convoy of hover jeeps, her uniform crisp despite the chaos. She approached them with that trademark American stride. Confident, sarcastic, and entirely unimpressed by the impossible. Jack, princess. She gave a curt nod. Or is it Queen Growlnera now? Growlnera tilted her head. I'd rather not wear a crown made of ashes. Fair. O'Neill folded her arms. The UN's in panic mode. Every species in the Galactic Registry is watching us. You too just upended the political order of 3 sectors. Half the universe is terrified, the other half wants to date you. Jack grinned. I'm free Friday. Not funny, O'Neill said flatly. We've been intercepting transmissions. There's chatter about something called the Silence. Whatever woke up when the Empire fell, it's old, and it's moving toward us. Growlnera's expression darkened. The Silence are not an empire. They are the absence of one. They destroy civilizations that become too loud, too proud. The galaxy fears them like children fear the dark. Jack frowned. And now they know we exist. Yes, she said. Because we shouted. O'Neill's comms crackled. General, sensors picking up massive spatial distortion beyond lunar orbit. The signal died in static. Above them, the air shimmered. The clouds split, parting like torn fabric. Something vast and angular began to emerge, a shadow blurring the stars themselves. It wasn't a ship. It was a structure, a geometry that hurt to look at, wrong in the way nightmares are wrong. Jack's coffee hit the ground. That doesn't look like a welcome wagon. Everyone to bunkers. O'Neill barked into her radio. Scramble defense grid now. But before the command could echo twice, the world froze. No sound, no wind. The horizon folded, like reality itself had forgotten how to stay flat. Every electronic device flickered dead. Growlnera's scales shimmered faintly, reacting to something unseen. They're already here, she whispered. Not ships, echoes. Echoes of what? Jack demanded. Of what comes after civilizations burn. The sky pulsed. Cities flickered between day and night, seconds apart. Then, as suddenly as it began, everything stilled. A voice, not spoken, but felt, rolled through every mind on Earth. You made noise. Jack clutched his head, gritting his teeth. Who the hell are you? We are the quiet that follows. Growlnera staggered, fury burning through fear. You dare trespass here? This world is under my protection, then you will fade with it. Jack grabbed her hand. Hey, no, we're not doing the fade thing. I've got half a tank of gas, a screwdriver, and zero plans of dying quietly. Her gaze met his, equal parts terror and determination. Jack, they unmake stars. Yeah. He tightened his grip, but they've never met a mechanic from Detroit. The voice rippled again, but something shifted in the air. A counterfrequency, low, rough, human, began humming through the ground. It wasn't technology. It was people. Across the globe, humans were singing. Not in unison, not planned, but instinctive. Soldiers, children, survivors, all raising voices against the void. O'Neill's voice cut through static. Every station's broadcasting. Every city. Every damn karaoke machine on the planet. We're fighting back with noise. The world pulsed again, brighter this time. The shadow hesitated, folding, distorting. The voice grew uncertain. You are chaos. Damn right, Jack shouted. We're human. He and Growlnera leapt into the cockpit of their hybrid ship, the same one that had ended an empire. Power surged as the engines roared to life, feeding on every radio signal, every scream of defiance on Earth. The vessel glowed like a comet. They rocketed upward, piercing the trembling sky. Around them, the silence's form began to unravel under the pressure of human defiance. Colors bled, geometry fractured. Growlnera's eyes glowed fiercely. Jack, if we overload the core, it might disperse their resonance. It will kill us. He gave a lopsided grin. Then let's make it loud. They locked hands over the controls. The ship blazed brighter, engines screaming, a sonic storm tearing through the void. The waveform burst outward, shattering the silence's form like glass. From the surface, humanity watched as their sky became fire and music, exploding in colors no one had words for. The silence screamed once and vanished. When the light faded, the ship was gone. Only silence remained. But this time, it was the kind that followed victory, not fear. General O'Neill lowered her head. They saved us. Days later, deep in orbit, a single signal pulsed through static, a faint broadcast from a damaged transponder. A voice, calm and tired, came through. Hey, O'Neill, if this reaches you, tell Earth we're alive. We're heading somewhere quiet, somewhere the stars can't find us. Then a pause. And tell the galaxy, humans don't go quietly. The transmission ended, and across the recovering Earth, under broken skies and newborn peace, the world laughed again. Defiant, loud, beautifully human.